Hello, this is Women Wrestlers You Should Know, sponsored by Premier Pro Wrestling. So please like, subscribe, and please check out the links in the description to support Premier Pro Wrestling. I'm Randy Ritchie, and I forget all the time now that the more that time passes, the less I would mean to people that might be listening to this insofar as the wrestling industry goes. So briefly, I've been in the wrestling industry for almost 35 years, I believe, and I've got my PhD in this industry as I was part of the last full-time crew that wrestled every night of the week in pro wrestling, and that was for Memphis, the USWA, and Jerry Jarrett. I've been endorsed by Mick Foley while he was the WWE champion, Jeff Jarrett as he was the WCW champion. So many legends to count, too many legends to count. I was a big part of the office in IWA Puerto Rico with Salvio Vega and Miguel Perez, and also was the production manager for TNA Wrestling, Impact Wrestling, back when it was on Spike TV from 2006 to 2007 during that program's highest ratings. That being said, let's get back to Women Wrestlers You Should Know, and you could tell by the thumbnail, she is a beautiful woman who wrestled by the name of Debbie Combs. When I first met Debbie, I was cutting my teeth on independent shows in Chicagoland and in the Midwest, and Miss Combs was in those locker rooms. Miss Combs traveled most of the time with her mother, who we should also talk about because she's legendary as well, Cora Combs. She gave off an amazing vibe that set her apart from the other female wrestlers at the time that I saw as far as approachability went. Was not unfriendly, but this girl, you had to respect her because she had boundaries. And as you can tell from her picture, in the industry back in 1988 and 89, where, quote, women should be on the wrestling card once in a while. They're like midgets. You got to have them sometimes for entertainment value. You see why I'm saying it, why someone would be guarded? That being said, remember I said that during this. Debbie Sostecki, Debbie Combs, is a retired professional wrestler. Her mother, Cora Combs, is also a professional wrestler. Debbie Combs made her debut at the Louisville Gardens for Angelo Paffo's International Championship Wrestling at the age of 16. I used to wrestle in that same building every Tuesday night. This is something you didn't know because I didn't know it. And this must have been right before Elizabeth, Miss Elizabeth. Debbie Combs dated Randy Savage for 5 years. Pretty cool, huh? Combs worked for World Wrestling, not for Entertainment, Federation for 1 year from 1986 to 1987, where she challenged the WWE Women's Championship, or challenged for the championship, against the Fabulous Moolah and Sherry Martel. Think about that for a second. 86 to 87. That's not much of a run, is it? You know? And there weren't too many places to work at the time in an industry that was predominantly male that pretty much felt that women were nothing but a gimmick match, so to speak. She also worked for the NWA. She won the title there. She was the NWA Women's Champion, and so many. She was also, now that I think about it, I think I might have ran into her a few times in Memphis. She also competed for the American Wrestling Association, the AWA, which was Vern Gagne, in the 80s. Upon joining the promotion, Combs wrestled against Sherry Martel as a babyface, but later turned heel and became tag team partners with Medusa Miceli. It looks like Miceli, and I have friends named Miceli. And that duo feuded with Heidi Lee Morgan and Brandy May. She returned to the WWF and World Championship Wrestling. After leaving the AWA, she later returned to the WWF in 1994 to challenge Alondra Blaze, who is Medusa Michelli. And like I say, you can see right here, we just talked about 4 different companies and how many women were in the industry at the time really trying to make a go of this and make a living in it. She wrestled Blaze once on an episode of the Wrestling Challenge and was scheduled to face her at WrestleMania 10, which would have been outstanding for Debbie Combs, but she was replaced by Leilani Kai. Just that one payoff can get you paid for the rest of your life. Not a ton of money, but one hell of a payoff for that night, so I'm really sad to hear that that opportunity escaped her. However, Leilani Kai is a good girl and a great worker. Combs briefly competed in World Championship Wrestling during the mid-90s, during their brief attempt at women's wrestling. So you see, Medusa, who was Alondra Blaze, was pretty influential, and she tried at WWF to go ahead and get that company to do what they were doing in Japan for All Japan Women's Wrestling, or All Japan Pro Wrestling's women's division, and trying to get that over here. But it just wouldn't last. As you can see, it would happen here for a year, there for a year, and they wouldn't put much behind it. Do you understand what I'm saying? So she was on the 1997 edition of WCW Nitro on March 31st. She lost to WCW Women's Champion Akira Hokuto. Once again, I think by 1997, that huge push for women's wrestling and the potential opportunity in, syndicated television here or network television here had dwindled. And I remember hearing the stories from the other guys, how hard Debbie and Cora worked. Debbie and her mother. Her mother is who trained her. Now let's talk about women's pro wrestling. In the early 90s, Debbie was also president and the booker, creative, of Women's Pro Wrestling, WPW, an all-women's promotion that produced direct-to-video matches. Her organization featured Awesome Andy, Babyface Nelly, Bambi, Candy Devine, Denise Storm, Jackie Moore, or Jacqueline Moore, Miss Texas, Lady Justice, Lisa Starr, Malaya Hosaka, who's an outstanding performer, Olympia Harterer, Peggy Lee Leather, Penelope Paradise, Penny Mitchell, Sandy Partlow, Susan Green, and Velvet McIntyre. Again, this is not a big talent roster. There weren't a lot of females around at the time in the business that could look at it and sink their teeth into it as a living, which is really sad, especially after that big boom over in Japan for women's wrestling. Now, the sad thing about it is this, too. I'm sure they started WPW, or Women's Pro Wrestling, to be a syndicated or network or cable program, and they couldn't sell it, because of the times. But they ended up probably doing a little bit of business, or a little bit of decent business, as far as going straight to VHS, which later became DVD, or might even been DVD at the time. After wrestling, since her retirement, Debbie Combs has worked as a booking processor with the Davidson County Sheriff's Office in Nashville, Tennessee. That's pretty outstanding, that she went ahead and got into service for her adult life. And I love the fact that she also lives in Nashville, Tennessee. When I was in the old USWA, or the Mid-South Territory, or Memphis Wrestling, that's where we were based out of. Half the week we would be down toward the Memphis end of the promotion, into different states, even like Arkansas and Mississippi and Missouri. And then when we were up north, we would work the Nashville towns all the way into Indiana, Kentucky, and I can't remember the other states, but we kept busy, man, like I said before. So I guess what I'm getting at is this. If this woman, and look at that picture, she's obviously marketable. Her features, she's just a beautiful woman, was around today with all that opportunity, or all the opportunity that there is today compared to then. Can you imagine you know. And God bless, I'm sure Cora Combs, and we'll get into that when I start looking around, is one way, shape, or form affiliated with Mildred Burke, who really is the godmother of professional wrestling. If you want to hear about Mildred Burke, go ahead and scroll down, and she's one of the women wrestlers you should know that we honored, you know, in commemoration of Women's History Month. I can't wait to see how that went, because there was an amazing wrestling boom a couple of times in this country, dating from the 50s and probably the 60s. And, you know, I'm sure Debbie herself is happy wherever she is, because she always seemed happy. She always seemed, like I told you guys, like she had those boundaries up. She wasn't going to be taken advantage or taken for granted in this male-dominated industry, you know, which did look down pretty much, let's face it, on women performers. So I bet today she's ecstatic, and I wouldn't be surprised if she's got her thumbprint on some of the gals or some of the girls or some of the women wrestlers for World Wrestling Entertainment today, where they've crossed paths. Like I said, you know, let's look at Jacqueline Moore, or Miss Jacqueline, or Jacqueline, you know, who wrestled for World Wrestling Entertainment for a long time, you know, and she performed for Debbie and her mother and the Women's Wrestling Project, you know. Honestly, I think it'd be a great time to get some money together and actually put together not a goofy form of Glow or Wow or whatever it was, but a real women's professional wrestling with athletes that can compete at the level of WWE's, and just have it be an all-women's program and an all-women's product. You know, the reason I can speak so well about women performers and women wrestlers is because of how long I've been in the industry and where I've been. And the turning point for this big boom for women in professional wrestling, I was a part of that being accepted by Dutch Mantel. It was Dutch Mantel and myself and his legal pad where we came up with all this stuff. And man, I cannot believe it. When I do get a chance, and I do watch World Wrestling Entertainment products and programming, the most compelling and solid and believable matches on their TV are, in fact, the women's division, you know? And it's not just one, it's all of them, you know? They work so hard, and it's nice to see them with a future. You know, for a lot of these girls that are already making a ton of money, that have worked their asses off to get there, they haven't even peaked yet. So I don't know. It is sad to see somebody with the looks and the drive and obviously the smarts and the dedication and focus that Debbie Combs had, just not having the opportunity in the industry that she loved and basically grew up in, as her mother was Cora Combs. But I'm sure she's happy and obviously landed on her feet and lives with no regrets. I'm proud to have known her. I'm proud to have seen her in the locker room when I first broke in. Personally, I thought, what a beautiful woman. I'm not going to say anything to her. I couldn't even look at her because I was intimidated by how beautiful she was. All right, guys, this is Women Wrestlers You Should Know in commemoration of Women's History Month, brought to you or sponsored by Premier Pro Wrestling, with no YouTube ads or commercials on there. So please like, subscribe, and check out in the description how you can support Premier Pro Wrestling.